All right, hey, how's it going, everybody? So I know it's been a while since I've posted anything. My family's been sick, so we've been dealing with that. But I figured, today's January 1st, so I would just post something like what I enjoyed reading over the last year. There's a lot of books that I read. I actually enjoyed many books, but I think I'm going to narrow this down to 5 books that I actually enjoyed. There's no particular order to how I'm ranking them. I'm actually going to talk about them from the first book I read until the most recent book that I've read. So, yeah, let's get started on that. One of the things I'm going to say is that I'm going to be talking about the books and what I liked about them. And so that's going to involve some spoilers for the book series. So just if you don't want any spoilers, I would not recommend watching this video currently. So the first book I'm going to be talking about is Sunlit Man by Brandon Sanderson. So I actually read this book after Wind and Truth. And so some of the stuff that people didn't know going into Sunlit Man, I actually knew because I had read Wind and Truth. And so I knew that Nomad was Sigil from the beginning. And I actually really enjoyed this book. I thought it was really nice in terms of a lot of Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere books are written in more of like a lower technological base type societies. And so reading Sunlit Man, it was super interesting seeing the way that the Cosmere fantasy aspect of things is being played into science fiction. And I liked focusing on a character like Sigil because he just doesn't get a lot of limelight in the Stormlight archives. And so I thought his journey on the planet Canticle, his issue that he has with holding the Dawn Shard, and how it causes him to have to basically fight and defend himself, but in very unique ways that he can't directly attack people. I thought that that was very interesting. And it's nice to just sometimes go in a different direction and see different entities. And also, it was interesting to see how, for example, Sigil is from Roshar, and then seeing people, for example, from Threnody, and how they are interacting with each other. And it kind of makes it so that the Cosmere feels a little bit smaller. And I really enjoyed the book. So the next book I'm going to talk about is Ruin by John Gwynne. And this book is a chonker of a book. I believe it's his longest book in the Faithful and the Fallen series. I've only read the 4 original for the original series for Faithful and the Fallen. There is a sequel series I have not read yet. But Ruin has to be by far my favorite of the 4. I loved all 4 books that I read. If I wasn't limiting myself, I would say that those 4 books could easily be in my top 5. But I don't want to just include John Gwynne. And so I read Ruin. And one of the things that I just absolutely loved is how there's just this constant up and down and up and down for like the characters, where it's you're constantly like, oh wow, these characters, they're finally, something good is going to happen to these characters, and something bad continues to happen, and you're just like, oh my gosh, like Corbin is an amazing main character. I like his growth throughout the 4 books and him embracing kind of like his destiny. But I also appreciate the fact that you get both sides. It's not just one perspective. For example, in Aragon, all you see is Aragon, right? But in this book, you see Corbin, you see the king, and how he's reacting to everything because he believes he is the bright star, right? And you see all these different aspects. So you see both sides and how both sides want to be the hero. And I just think it's so, and the side characters are almost better than the main characters. Like Camlin has probably one of the greatest story arcs that I've ever read in fantasy. And the way that book 3 ends, I think it's absolutely amazing, because it's like, how is this happening on a 3rd book right before the final book? And you're just like, I feel like, I don't know how they're going to wrap this up, and only 1 book remaining. And he does it, and he does a fantastic job. Okay, so the next book I'm going to be talking about is Never Die by Rob J. Hayes. And this is my first Rob J. Hayes book. I have not read another one yet, and it's not because I didn't like it. Because Never Die is, I think it's amazing. I think the plot twist at the end is very interesting. I think that the characters and their um, kind of Suicide Squad esque journey, where they're basically all being revived after they die, and they're all attached to this character called Ein, who is this little boy that's basically taking them on this journey to go kill the Emperor. And I also don't read a lot of books in that time period, or like Asian inspired fantasies, which I I feel like I'm missing out, because I do definitely enjoy that time period. But I thought that the characters were the standout of the book. Like, they have this journey, but the journey, they get to it at the end, but the journey is um, almost not as just interesting as the different characters are, and the way they interact with each other. And you meet, like, the book is not very long, it's 300 to 400 pages, and their interactions within those 300 to 400 pages makes you think you've read like 1,000 pages of these characters being together. And I found it fascinating. I liked the characters. Cho is a really good main character. Zihao is a good antithesis to Cho, and I really enjoyed the book. Second to last book is Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. So I am not opposed to reading young adult. I actually do like quite a bit of young adult. I like the Percy Jackson series. I like the Aragon series. So reading Skyward, I thought it was so, so good. Kind of along the same lines as Sunlit Man, where reading Brandon Sanderson writing science fiction, I found it very interesting the way he writes his characters in this book. I like Sensa's character and how she interacts with the different with, for example, Jorgen, right? And how it's this journey of this little girl growing up, and how her reality of what happened in her past with her father gets altered as she learns more and more information about the different aspects of their universe, and kind of how their universe is run. And the first book takes place on their main planet, but the later books expands the universe to be multiple planets with multiple races of beings and different dimensions, and it is very, very interesting. There is a sequel series that's being written, and I am super excited to get my hands on that. The last book that I'm going to talk about is The Fall by Ryan Cahill. So this is my first Ryan Cahill book. I actually just read this yesterday, so December 31st. Finished it in about 2 hours. It's a pretty short read. It's like 80 pages. But wow, this is the first book that he wrote, and I found it amazing. So I can only imagine that it'll get better as time goes on. I thought just being thrust into this world where there's no explanation about what's going on. There's a fight within the second page of the book that is life or death. There's people dying all around within the first 5 pages. I thought it was amazing. I think that just how you can see that the bad characters are not completely bad. They have the villain has their own chapter that is dedicated to how they're thinking about things and why they did the things they did. And you have the other people that are involved in the story and how they are thinking about the things that they're doing. And you're like, man, I just don't really think there's like an actual villain. Like, there is definitely a side that we are supposed to think of as good and a side that we are supposed to think of as bad. But really, it's just people trying to follow what they think is the right thing to do. And I'll tell you, like, if there is more of that in his books going forward, I am super excited to read the rest of his books.